you look at the market, I mean, maybe PlayStation and Sony have an excuse to drag theirs out a bit longer because it's got a Blu-ray player, it's more future-proofed, and I believe it's technically superior to the 360. Having said that, conversely, I think the 360 was the better console, and I went on record by saying that I thought because of the support, and when you didn't get the red rings of death, it probably was the best of the three. But sorry, we digress onto consoles, which is not what this was about. Sorry, Roy, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Not in regards to consoles.
Yeah, well, I was going to say about the consoles, I think it's more of became a bit of a publicity stunt at some stage. I don't think they staged the disappointment with the drivers. I think they were, at that stage, kind of expecting more sales. You have to remember, they spent, as far as I can tell, something close to $500 million based on All Things Digital, which is a reputable publication. They spent $500 million just marketing this thing. Now, even if it sold a million units in the first 10 days, which to me is an impressive considering people already have the machines to, like say 40 million or so machines out there, 1 million sales within the first week and a half, that's like 1 in 40. That's pretty bad. And I think maybe what happened is that they weren't selling so many, and they basically try and give people excuses to go out and buy some. Even if they sell it at a profit of, say, I don't know, I think the exact number, the difference between $150 and the manufacturing cost, which is said to be around $70 or $60, something like that, is, say, $100. So if they sold 1 million units, and they have they have the shop making some of the money. Let's say Microsoft makes about $50 in each of these units. So from 1 million units, right, they only make about, you do the maths, they never get anywhere close to making $500 million on that. They would have to sell a lot of these things to just make up for the advertising, not even the expenses of developing the thing, not even trying to make a profit, just to cover the expenses of pushing this thing into the press, which they did for many months. I think it's a pretty disappointing thing. And I think by talking about it, we kind of help them advertise this thing as, open for hacking, everybody buy one and hack on it and use it on Linux. And I just think, well, they make a profit selling these things, so.
Yeah, I think to keep, I was going to say, to keep some, just to put another sort of angle on this, the thing, when you're looking at a new peripheral, a new controller for a games console, there has to be the games to go with it. So there might not be at this stage, this doesn't just apply to the Kinect, it applies to the Wii especially, with all the bizarre controllers and the tennis rackets and whatever they've got, as well as every other console that does unusual peripherals. Some games that you might buy a peripheral that only works really on that one game, and that makes it very expensive. You're not just paying the 40 odd bucks for the game, you're paying for the peripheral as well. So I think if someone that's going in to buy a new game on a Friday, a Saturday, when they get paid for whatever console, be it the 360, the PS3, whatever, if they've got an option of saying, right, there's one new game that I like the look of at 40 and I've already got the controller, or there's another one that the game's 40 but I still have to buy the peripheral as well, and that's going to be another 100, 150 on top of it, that's an awful lot of money to invest just for one game. So they could easily be holding back to say, I want to make sure that I can actually use this peripheral with lots of other games to see if it's actually worth buying. So, I could quite easily see that being a legitimate reason for people to just sort of hold off on any peripheral like that. And certainly 150 to me is quite expensive just for a controller, essentially, a fancy controller.
See, I saw the Microsoft recent statement about it was intentionally open as being a sort of backtrack and a saving face exercise. I think when they released the Kinect and then found out there was this bounty on it for the open source drivers, I think they tried flexing their muscles and overestimated how much power and influence they have in the industry. And when they saw that nobody was actually paying any attention to them and people were going to do as they pleased, they sort of backtracked and came up with this scheme that, we intended it to be open from day one.
Uh,
I think personally, Microsoft should be very pleased whoever buys the thing.
Yeah, well,
My view.
you have to remember they cannot afford to sell only 1 million or 2 million or 3 million of these things. They depend on developers checking how many they sold, no matter how it's used. If a person just buys it to use in Linux and not to actually use an Xbox 360, that's fine with them, because it's the same reason they want to try and sell lots of consoles to begin with. They have to persuade the developers to develop in this case, specifically for the Kinect. If you're going to be a developer, and you have to check what your market target audience is, and you have to check how many people even have the device that's needed to play the game. With Nintendo, if you're going to use one of these devices, I think you have well over even after some of these devices broke, you still have actively, say, 50 million people using the Wii. Yeah. So if you're a developer and you're going to spend a lot of time working with the SDKs and making sure it works with the peripheral, you target an audience of potentially 50 million people. If Microsoft can only say, well, we only sold 2 million units within the first 2 months, that's it. They lost the developers. And that's the same thing that keeps Windows going. Basically, they can say, well, we have an install base, which involves just about every user using Windows, at least in a partition or something. Lots of Mac users use Windows computers, at work, or perhaps they do a boot or something like that. So Microsoft can persuade developers to always port things like Firefox to Windows, which would be hard for a platform like BSD to do. So what they do here is they develop a platform, and this platform is dependent on people buying a whole new peripheral separately, and they come very, very late to this game. I don't know how many Sony sold, but like I said in the previous show, I think it was 2 days ago, I think 1 million in 10 days, and if that's the number I remember correctly,
The numbers are relative as well. If you're talking, if say for example the three of us made a startup and sold 1 million units in a week, that would be hailed as a huge success. But for a company that's listed as, it's a recognised household name, people expect the really big numbers. And when these big companies don't deliver those really big numbers, then you've got to think, what are they doing wrong? They've got all this money they can plough into advertising and in development to get it right, and they've got all these opportunities, and they only did so much. So yeah, numbers are all kind of relative, I think.
Yeah, well, they spent a lot of money. I'm pretty surprised people were talking about. I think the number quoted for Windows Phone 7 was $400 million, and some used to say $500 million, and it kind of varies depending on who you ask. And that was the same with what I call Vista 7 or Windows 7. There was a variation. Some people said 300 million, and some people said $500 million on advertising the thing. Now look at the product. In the case of Windows, you're talking about something that's probably being used by over 1 billion people, and here you're talking about a controller for something that will maybe sell to 1 million people and has zero market share to begin with. And the same thing with Phone 7. It's just about starting from 0.00 market share, because it was kind of the first of its kind, and all this money being sunk into the marketing makes you. Well, I'm going to write a post tomorrow. You'll find Ballmer making some very embarrassing statements, because they know they did all they could as far as marketing is concerned, pushing the product out the door far too early. Things move too fast for them. Migo and Apple and Google with Android, they're actually far ahead in terms of development. They do 3D things and flippings, and they actually stay affordable. Whereas in Microsoft's case, they have these groups working, and they have all these companies they buy, companies like Danger, and they have all this so-called IP and code, but it's kind of clunky, and they haven't worked on it too well. And all they can do is spend money on advertising to show at least they try to stay relevant. I'll look for a quote while you say that. I'll just look for it.
Yeah, that plays into the whole expectations thing as well. People expect Microsoft